been able to cope really. And I put that down to your really early years, childhood experience. But also the relationship that you've got. You're amazingly close.
Yeah.
And yes, you know.
Most of the time.
No, but and some families sadly aren't as lucky.
They tried to hide it, but the truth couldn't stay buried forever. What Prince William and Princess Catherine just revealed about their fourth baby has left the entire world in absolute shock. Palace insiders are calling it the most heartbreaking royal announcement in decades. Catherine's tears, William's devastation, and the secret they've been keeping from the public for months. What really happened behind those palace walls will break your heart. For anyone who had followed the Wales family over the years, the news landed with unexpected weight.
And use my platform for good. And whenever I'm doing stuff, I'm constantly analysing where best can I use my platform for the greatest impact. And talking about the Earthshot was always an idea that positivity and a positive message to anyone.
Catherine and William had always seemed to embrace parenthood with genuine joy. Their three children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, were frequently photographed at public events, their personalities shining through despite the formal settings. Many observers had assumed that the family might grow once more, particularly given Catherine's evident warmth around babies during public engagements. The speculation had reached fever pitch earlier in the year when Catherine stepped back from her public duties in January 2024. Royal watchers immediately began analysing every detail, searching for clues that might confirm their suspicions. Was she pregnant again? Was that why she had suddenly withdrawn from the spotlight? The questions multiplied with each passing week of her absence, fueled by the palace's initial reluctance to provide detailed explanations. Tabloid newspapers devoted entire pages to the mystery of Catherine's whereabouts. Fashion experts analysed photographs from months earlier, looking for any sign they might have missed. Body language specialists offered their interpretations of recent appearances. Social media platforms buzzed with theories ranging from the plausible to the outlandish. Every statement from Kensington Palace was dissected word by word, analysed for hidden meanings or subtle confirmations. The truth, as it eventually emerged, bore no resemblance to these hopeful speculations. Catherine had not been expecting a child. She had been recovering from abdominal surgery and, subsequently, undergoing treatment for cancer. The revelation in March 2024 shocked the nation and immediately reframed every question about her absence. What had seemed like potential good news was actually a family facing one of life's most difficult challenges. When the November statement finally arrived, it came at a moment when Catherine had returned to limited public duties. Her chemotherapy had concluded in September, and she was gradually rebuilding her strength. The timing was clearly intentional. This was not a decision announced from a position of weakness or crisis. William and Catherine wanted the world to understand that they were making this choice together, from a place of clarity and mutual agreement. The statement itself was carefully worded, as all palace communications are, but it carried something that felt different. There were traces of real emotion in the language, hints at difficult conversations that had taken place behind closed doors. It acknowledged the public's long-standing interest in their family, while firmly establishing that some decisions belonged to William and Catherine alone. The question of whether to have another child was deeply personal, yet their positions in public life meant they felt obligated to address it directly. Royal observers noted the unusual transparency of the announcement. Previous generations of royals had rarely felt the need to explain their family planning decisions in such explicit terms. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip had 4 children, but no one expected them to issue statements about why they stopped there. The same was true for other royal couples throughout history. Family size was considered a private matter, even for people whose lives were otherwise subject to intense public scrutiny. But William and Catherine have always approached their roles differently. They understand that public curiosity comes with the territory they have inherited, but they also believe in setting boundaries. Over the years, they have tried to strike a balance between accessibility and privacy, particularly when it comes to their children. This statement fits that pattern. It offered enough information to satisfy legitimate interest while preserving the most intimate details of their decision-making process. The public reactions split along predictable lines. Some people expressed genuine disappointment. They had invested emotionally in the narrative of a growing royal family, and this announcement felt like the closing of a door they had hoped would remain open. Online forums filled with comments from people who had been hoping for another royal baby to celebrate, another excuse for the national joy that seems to accompany these occasions. Others responded with overwhelming support and respect. These voices praised William and Catherine for prioritising health and well-being over public expectation or dynastic considerations. Many pointed out that 3 children is already a larger family than most British households have today. Why should the Wales family be expected to have more simply because they are royal? The conversation quickly became about more than just one couple's family planning. It touched on broader questions about women's autonomy, about healthcare decisions, and about the ways public figures navigate personal choices under constant observation. Social media platforms erupted with opinions within minutes of the announcement. Royal commentators who had spent years speculating about a 4th child suddenly had to pivot to analysing why it would not happen. Think pieces appeared in newspapers and magazines, examining the decision from every possible angle. Television programs devoted segments to expert analysis, bringing in everyone from medical professionals to royal historians to offer their perspectives. Yet beneath all the noise and commentary, there was something else, percolating through the public consciousness. A current of deep respect for what William and Catherine had endured over the past year. The public had watched Catherine face a cancer diagnosis with remarkable grace. They had seen William balance his duties as a future king with his responsibilities as a husband and father during an impossibly difficult time. The strength of their partnership had been tested in ways most couples never experience, and they had emerged with that partnership clearly intact. The statement made no mention of specific medical details, nor should it have. Medical privacy is a fundamental right that belongs to everyone, regardless of their position in society. But those who had followed Catherine's journey through 2024 could read between the lines. The abdominal surgery announced in January had been serious. The cancer diagnosis that followed had required months of preventative chemotherapy. These were not minor footnotes in a fairy tale. They were real experiences that left real impacts, both physical and emotional. For a woman who had already endured 3 pregnancies complicated by severe hyperemesis gravidarum, the idea of another pregnancy carried additional layers of complexity. The public had seen the polished photographs of Catherine leaving the hospital with each newborn, looking radiant and composed. What they had not seen were the weeks and months of severe illness that preceded those moments, the hospitalizations, the weight loss, the sheer physical toll that each pregnancy had demanded. The decision about a 4th child was clearly inseparable from these cumulative experiences. This was not simply about whether William and Catherine wanted another baby in abstract terms. It was about what Catherine's body had already been through and what they were willing to ask of it in the future. It was about realistic assessments of health and capacity, about weighing desires against practical realities. What made the announcement particularly moving was its implicit acknowledgement of dreams that circumstances had altered. Sources close to the couple, speaking anonymously to various media outlets, suggested that in happier times, Catherine had spoken warmly about the possibility of a 4th child. William, who has proven himself to be a devoted and hands-on father, would likely have welcomed another addition to their family under different circumstances. But life had intervened in ways neither of them could have predicted when they were younger and planning their future together. To truly understand the weight of this decision, it helps to look back at the journey that brought William and Catherine to this moment. Their story began in the autumn of 2001, when 2 young students found themselves living in the same residence hall at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. She was Catherine Middleton, the daughter of self-made entrepreneurs who had built a successful party supplies business. He was Prince William, second in line to the British throne, trying to find some semblance of normal university life despite his extraordinary circumstances. Their romance did not begin with immediate sparks or dramatic gestures. Instead, it unfolded gradually, naturally, the way many university relationships do. They were friends first, part of the same social circle, attending the same classes and parties. Over time, that friendship deepened into something more. By their second year, they were living together in a shared house with other friends, and their relationship had become romantic, though they tried to keep it as private as possible given the inevitable media attention. Catherine demonstrated qualities during those early years that would serve her well in the decades to come. She was patient when the press began following her movements around campus. She maintained her discretion when friends were offered money for stories about her relationship with William. she remained grounded and focused on her studies even as her life became increasingly complicated by the attention that came with dating a prince. Those who knew her during this period often commented on her remarkable ability to stay centered amid chaos that would have overwhelmed many others. William, for his part, was navigating his own complex set of challenges. He had enrolled at St Andrews partly to escape the suffocating attention he received in London, hoping that the remote Scottish location would offer some breathing room. He was also dealing with the ongoing grief of losing his mother, Princess Diana, just 4 years earlier. The wounds from that tragedy were still raw, and he was trying to figure out who he was beyond being Diana's son or the future king. Their relationship was not without its difficulties. In 2007, after several years together, they broke up. The separation lasted only a few months, but it was significant. Both William and Catherine later acknowledged that the break gave them perspective. It allowed them to experience life apart and to recognize what they meant to each other. When they reunited, their relationship was stronger and more certain than before. The engagement came in November 2010, announced to the world with Catherine wearing the famous sapphire and diamond ring that had once belonged to Princess Diana. William's choice to use his mother's ring was deeply symbolic. He was bringing Catherine into a family that had been fractured by tragedy, scandal, and very public dysfunction. By giving her Diana's ring, he was signaling that Catherine had his mother's metaphorical blessing, that she was the woman he believed Diana would have wanted him to marry. The wedding in April 2011 was watched by billions of people around the world. Westminster Abbey was filled with royalty, dignitaries, and celebrities, but the event itself felt remarkably personal. The couple had insisted on including their own touches, from the choice of music to the guest list that included many of their university friends. When Catherine walked down the aisle in her Alexander McQueen gown, designed by Sarah Burton, she looked calm and radiant. The joy on William's face when she reached him was unmistakable. They settled into married life with what seemed like relative ease, dividing their time between London and Anglesey, where William was stationed as an RAF search and rescue helicopter pilot. For a brief period, they experienced something approaching normalcy. Catherine accompanied William to official engagements, but also had time to adjust to her new role without the immediate pressure of producing an heir. Prince George arrived in July 2013, born at St Mary's Hospital in London. The world watched as William and Catherine emerged from the hospital just hours after the birth, Catherine looking remarkably composed in a blue polka dot dress, cradling her newborn son. What the photographs did not show was that the pregnancy had been extremely difficult. Catherine had suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum, a severe form of morning sickness that causes extreme nausea and vomiting. She had been hospitalized early in the pregnancy when dehydration became dangerous. The condition is far more serious than typical morning sickness. Women with hyperemesis gravidarum can lose significant weight, become severely dehydrated, and require intravenous fluids and medication. For Catherine, who was trying to maintain her public duties while dealing with this illness, the challenge was immense. She had to cancel engagements, something she rarely did, and spent weeks largely confined to her home. Princess Charlotte followed in May 2015. Once again, Catherine experienced hyperemesis gravidarum, though she managed it somewhat better the second time around, having learned what to expect and how to manage the symptoms. Charlotte's birth was significant beyond the joy of welcoming a daughter. Due to changes in succession laws that had been enacted in 2013, Charlotte would not be displaced in the line of succession by any younger brothers. She was fourth in line to the throne and would remain so unless George had children of his own. The decision to change the succession laws had been years in the making, involving coordination among all the Commonwealth realms where the British monarch serves as head of state. The old system, which prioritised male heirs over female ones regardless of birth order, had long been criticised as outdated and sexist. Charlotte became the first royal daughter to benefit from the new rules, a small but meaningful step toward gender equality within the institution. Prince Louis arrived in April 2018, completing what most observers assumed was the Wales family. His birth was announced with the now familiar sight of William and Catherine emerging from the Lindo wing at St Mary's Hospital, Catherine looking immaculate despite having given birth just hours earlier. Louis, from the start, showed a spirited personality that would later endear him to millions when he made faces during the Platinum Jubilee celebrations. Each time Catherine appeared after giving birth, Looking polished and put together, she was reshaping the narrative around royal motherhood. She was not following protocol that demanded such appearances. Previous royal mothers had often waited days before being photographed with their newborns. Catherine chose to appear quickly, but it was her choice, a way of controlling her own story rather than having others control it for her. What the public did not see were the months of misery that preceded those composed hospital appearances. With each pregnancy, Catherine endured weeks of severe hyperemesis gravidarum. There were days when she could barely keep down water, let alone food. There were times when she needed intravenous fluids to stay hydrated. The weight loss was significant, the exhaustion profound. Yet she managed it 3 times, always maintaining her public composure even as she struggled privately. The question of a 4th child had lingered since Louis's birth. Historical precedent suggested larger families were traditional for senior royals. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip had 4 children. George VI and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, had 2 but would likely have had more if circumstances had been different. Large families had been the norm, partly because of the need for multiple heirs in case of tragedy, partly because of different cultural expectations about family size. But William and Catherine were forging their own path. They were part of a generation that thought differently about family size, that prioritised quality time with children over sheer numbers. 3 children already meant they were outnumbered as parents, as William jokingly noted during public engagements. It meant challenges when travelling, challenges in terms of attention and resources, challenges in balancing royal duties with hands-on parenting. Still, there had been hints that they might expand their family further. Catherine was often photographed cooing over babies during official visits, her face lighting up in ways that suggested she missed that infant stage. During a visit to Northern Ireland in 2020, William joked that seeing new parents made them broody, that they had to be careful or they would be tempted to have more children. These moments fed speculation and gave hope to those who wanted to see another royal baby. But even in those lighter moments, there were practical considerations that careful observers might have noticed. 3 children meant 1 for each adult hand when they travelled without staff, as William had pointed out. It meant fitting into standard vehicles without requiring motorcades. It meant, in his words, being outnumbered but not overwhelmed. Adding a 4th would shift that balance significantly, would require different logistics and different approaches to family life. The year 2024 began like any other for the Wales family. They had spent the Christmas holidays at sea, Sandringham with the extended royal family, a tradition that continued despite King Charles's own health concerns. The children had returned to Lambrook School in Berkshire after the break, and Catherine was preparing for a busy schedule of public engagements that would carry her through the spring months. Then, in mid-January, everything changed. Kensington Palace released a statement announcing that the Princess of Wales had been admitted to the London clinic for planned abdominal surgery. The statement was deliberately vague, as palace communications often are when it comes to medical matters. It described the procedure as successful and explicitly stated that the condition was not cancer-related. Catherine would remain in hospital for up to 2 weeks, the statement said, before returning home to continue her recovery. She would not resume public duties until after Easter, a timeline that immediately signalled the seriousness of whatever medical issue had required surgical intervention. The nation settled into a period of waiting for updates that came only sparingly. The palace maintained its position that Catherine deserved privacy during her recovery, releasing only the most basic information about her progress. William was photographed leaving the hospital on several occasions, his face showing the strain of worry that any spouse would feel. The children continued with their normal routines, attending school and participating in their usual activities, shielded as much as possible from the media attention that inevitably surrounded their mother's hospitalization. Catherine remained in the hospital for 13 days, a lengthy stay by modern standards. When she was finally discharged, photographers managed to capture only brief glimpses of a vehicle leaving the hospital grounds. The woman who had always appeared so vibrant and energetic was now recovering from major surgery, away from public view. She returned to Adelaide Cottage in Windsor, the family's primary residence, where she would spend the following weeks focused entirely on recuperation. The palace continued to maintain that Catherine's condition was not cancer-related, and there was no reason at the time to doubt this assessment. Medical experts speaking to the media suggested various possibilities for what might have required such extensive surgery and recovery time, but these were all speculation. The actual details remain private, as they should have for any patient, regardless of their public profile. Then came March, and with it a video message that nobody wanted to hear. On a Friday afternoon, Kensington Palace released a video recorded in the gardens of Windsor. Catherine sat on a bench, speaking directly to the camera with William beside her. Her words were clear and devastating. Tests following the January surgery had found cancer. She was undergoing a course of preventative chemotherapy. She asked for privacy and understanding, particularly for the sake of her 3 young children as they processed this news and adjusted to their new reality. The diagnosis hit the nation like a physical blow. Catherine was only 42 years old. She had always embodied health and vitality, appearing at engagements with energy and enthusiasm. She had 3 young children who needed their mother. Yet here she was, facing the same disease that touches millions of families every year, that respects neither title, nor privilege, nor youth. The video itself was remarkable for its vulnerability. Catherine's voice carried the weight of what she had been through and what lay ahead. The determined set of her shoulders showed her resolve to fight this disease. William's protective presence beside her, his hand resting on her knee, spoke volumes about what they were facing together. This was not a polished palace statement read by a spokesperson. This was a wife and mother telling the world that she was sick and asking for space to heal. Medical experts were quick to provide context for those trying to understand what preventative chemotherapy meant. This type of treatment, they explained, is administered after surgery when cancer has been found, but there is no evidence of remaining disease. The goal is to eliminate any cancer cells that might have escaped detection to prevent the cancer from returning. It is a precautionary measure, but not a gentle one by any means. The side effects of chemotherapy can be brutal and varied. Extreme fatigue is common, the kind of exhaustion that makes even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Nausea and vomiting can be persistent despite anti-nausea medications. Hair loss occurs with many chemotherapy regimens, though not all. The immune system becomes compromised, making patients vulnerable to infections that healthy people would easily fight off. Many patients describe feeling worse during treatment than they did before their diagnosis, a cruel irony that makes the process even more difficult to endure. Catherine endured months of this treatment, largely out of public view. The palace provided occasional updates confirming that her treatment was progressing, but offered no details about which specific chemotherapy drugs she was receiving or how she was tolerating them. The privacy was appropriate and necessary, but it left many people wondering and worrying about how she was really doing. In June, Catherine made a surprise appearance at Trooping the Colour, the annual celebration of the monarch's birthday. She had initially indicated she would not attend, but felt well enough on the day to participate. The sight of her on the Buckingham Palace balcony, thinner than before but smiling, brought tears to many eyes. She looked fragile in a way the public had never seen before, but she was there, showing up for an event that mattered to the monarchy and to her father-in-law. Later that summer, Catherine attended the Wimbledon Tennis Championships, another tradition she had maintained for years in her role as patron of the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club. When she walked into the royal box, the crowd gave her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Many spectators were openly crying, moved by her courage in appearing publicly while still undergoing treatment. Catherine smiled and waved, clearly touched by the reception, looking more like herself than she had in months. Each public appearance was carefully managed and timed for moments when she felt strong enough to face the cameras and crowds. Between these appearances, she remained largely at home, focusing on her treatment and her children. William took on additional duties where possible, covering for Catherine at events she would normally have attended. The King and Queen, along with other senior royals, also stepped up to ensure that the royal calendar could continue, despite 2 of its most prominent members dealing with cancer diagnoses. In September, Catherine released another video message, this time with much better news. Her chemotherapy treatment had concluded. The relief was palpable, not just for Catherine and William, but for the entire nation that had been following her journey with concern and affection. She acknowledged in the video that the road ahead would still be challenging, that recovery from chemotherapy does not happen overnight. She spoke about taking things day by day, focusing on staying cancer-free, and gradually returning to public duties as her strength allowed. Medical professionals were careful to explain that completing chemotherapy, while a major milestone, did not mean Catherine was immediately back to her old self. Chemotherapy leaves lasting effects on the body. Fatigue can persist for months. The immune system takes time to rebuild. Cognitive effects, sometimes called chemo brain, can affect memory and concentration. For someone who had already endured a major surgery followed by months of grueling treatment, the recovery process would be lengthy. For a woman who had previously experienced 3 difficult pregnancies, who was now in her early 40s, who had spent 9 months fighting for her health, the question of another pregnancy had become exponentially more complicated. It was no longer a simple matter of whether they wanted a 4th child. It had become a question of what was medically advisable, what was physically possible, and what risks they were willing to accept. Medical professionals who spoke anonymously to various media outlets about similar situations were clear in their assessments. Pregnancy after cancer treatment is certainly possible for many women, but it requires careful consideration of multiple factors. There are questions about timing and whether the body has sufficiently recovered from the chemotherapy. There are concerns about hormone changes associated with pregnancy and whether these might affect cancer recurrence risks. For someone of Catherine's age, there are additional considerations around maternal and fetal health that apply to any pregnancy in the early 40s. The decision about a 4th child was not happening in isolation. It was happening in the context of everything Catherine's body had been through over the past year. The major abdominal surgery, the cancer diagnosis, the months of chemotherapy, the ongoing recovery. All of these experiences informed what came next, shaping the choices that William and Catherine would ultimately make about their family's future. Prince George turned 11 in July 2024, reaching that milestone with a maturity that seemed to exceed his years. A second in line to the throne, George has always carried a weight that his younger siblings do not bear. He is the future, the continuation of more than 1,000 years of monarchy, the boy who will one day wear the crown. Yet his parents have fought fiercely to give him something approximating a normal childhood, despite the extraordinary circumstances of his birth and position. George attends Lambrook School alongside Charlotte and Lewis, travelling there each morning from Adelaide Cottage. He plays football, takes swimming lessons, and participates in school plays and sports days just like his classmates. The other children know who he is, of course, but they also know him simply as George, the boy who loves helicopters and can be somewhat shy in large groups. William and Catherine have insisted on this duality from the beginning, acknowledging his destiny while protecting his present, and allowing him to be a child first and a future king second. When Catherine fell ill, George understood more than his parents might have wished. At 11, he is old enough to read news headlines, to overhear adult conversations, to sense the tension and worry in his home. William later spoke in interviews about the difficulty of explaining cancer to children, of finding words that were honest without being frightening. George, he said, had been remarkably brave throughout the ordeal, even taking on something of a protective role toward his younger siblings that was both touching and concerning for a child his age. Princess Charlotte, 9 years old, has emerged as quite a force in her own right. She appears to have inherited her mother's poise and her father's determination, a combination that palace insiders suggest will make her a formidable royal as she grows older. During Catherine's illness, Charlotte became her mother's shadow whenever she was allowed, offering comfort in the intuitive way that daughters often can. The bond between mother and daughter, always strong, deepened considerably through the adversity they faced together. Charlotte represents something historically significant in the royal lineage. Thanks to changes in succession laws enacted in 2013, she cannot be displaced by Louis or any future younger brothers. She is 4th in line to the throne and will remain so unless George eventually has children of his own. This makes her unique in the modern British monarchy, a daughter who holds her place by right rather than by the accident of being born before any brothers. Prince Louis, the youngest at 6 years old, has provided moments of levity during what has been an incredibly difficult year for his family. His antics at public events, his uninhibited joy, his complete lack of self-consciousness about his own significance have endeared him to millions. During Catherine's treatment, Louis continued being exactly who he is, demanding attention, offering sticky-fingered affection, reminding his parents that life continues and children need normalcy, even when everything feels suspended in uncertainty. William and Catherine's approach to parenting has been deeply shaped by their own very different childhood experiences. William grew up inside the royal bubble, his early years marked by his parents' increasingly acrimonious marriage and their eventual separation. The trauma of losing his mother when he was just 15 left scars that required years of therapy to process. He has spoken openly about this in recent years, discussing how he had to work through that grief and pain before he could move forward with his own life. William has been determined that his own children will have what he did not: two parents who genuinely love each other and demonstrate that love, stability and consistency in their home life, privacy when possible, protected from the worst excesses of media intrusion, most importantly, agency over their own narratives as they grow older, the freedom to develop their own identities within the constraints of their positions. Catherine brought a completely different perspective to their partnership. She was raised in Bucklebury, a village in Berkshire, in a household that was comfortable but fundamentally normal. Her parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, had built their business from the ground up and maintained close family relationships throughout. Catherine's childhood was filled with family holidays, village activities, and the kind of ordinary experiences that William never had. She understands the value of that ordinariness, of children who do chores and understand that privilege comes with responsibility. Together, William and Catherine have created an environment for their children that honors both their extraordinary circumstances and their fundamental humanity. George, Charlotte, and Louis are growing up knowing they are special, but also knowing they are loved for who they are rather than what they represent. 3 children fit that vision in ways that feel complete and balanced. Each child has their defined role within the family dynamic. George was the eldest and most aware of his future responsibilities. Charlotte as the confident middle child. Louis as the baby who keeps everyone from taking things too seriously. Adding a 4th child would inevitably shift that carefully constructed dynamic. There would be a significant age gap to consider. Louis would be at least 7 years older than any new sibling, fundamentally changing the family structure from 3 contemporaries who play together to 3 older children and a baby. The established relationships and roles would all need to adjust and recalibrate. Beyond these practical family dynamics, there is the pressing question of time and attention. William and Catherine have made it abundantly clear through their actions that they want to be hands-on parents. Not in the performative way that previous generations of royals sometimes attempted, but in the everyday sense of school runs and bedtime stories and helping with homework. They already struggle to balance their increasing royal duties with their family commitments, often choosing family over engagements when possible. Adding another child would strain that delicate balance, potentially to a breaking point where something would have to give. The conversation about whether to have a 4th child had been ongoing between William and Catherine for several years, but it took on new urgency and gravity in the aftermath of Catherine's diagnosis. During the quiet moments between treatment sessions, during the long nights when sleep was elusive and the future felt uncertain, they talked about what they wanted their lives to look like. They discussed their children, their marriage, Catherine's health, and yes, whether there would ever be a 4th baby to complete their family. Catherine had always been more open to the possibility in theory. She comes from a family of 3 siblings and has often spoken warmly about the dynamics of larger families. In an ideal world, one unmarred by illness and unburdened by the unique pressures of royal life, she might have welcomed another child. But this was not an ideal world, and the decision before them required clear-eyed pragmatism rather than wishful thinking about what might have been. William's perspective was shaped by different but equally important considerations. He had watched his wife suffer through 3 extraordinarily difficult pregnancies. He had seen her hospitalized with hyperemesis gravidarum and had witnessed firsthand the physical and emotional toll it took on her each time. He had also watched her navigate the impossible demands of royal life while caring for 3 young children, and he understood intimately the sacrifices she made daily. The idea of asking her to go through all of that again, especially after everything she had just endured with surgery and cancer treatment, felt impossible to him. They consulted with Catherine's medical team, of course. Her oncologists provided guidance about appropriate recovery timelines and the medical considerations around pregnancy after chemotherapy. The consensus among her doctors was cautious but not entirely prohibitive. If they waited a sufficient period, if Catherine's health remained stable, if they were willing to accept certain elevated risks, another pregnancy was theoretically possible from a medical standpoint. But theoretical, possibility and lived reality exist in entirely different realms. Catherine was honest with herself and with William about what her body had been through. The surgery had been major, requiring significant recovery time. The chemotherapy had left her depleted in ways that were not immediately visible to others, but were deeply felt by her. At 42, she was not the same woman who had carried Louis 6 years earlier. Age, experience, and serious illness had all left their marks. There were other important voices in the conversation as well. King Charles, himself dealing with his own cancer diagnosis that had been announced in February 2024, understood implicitly what his daughter-in-law was facing. He had been unfailingly supportive throughout her treatment, adjusting her workload expectations and never pressuring her to return to duties before she was ready. When the question of a fourth grandchild came up, his position was unequivocal. Catherine's health had to come first, and the family they already had was blessing enough. Queen Camilla, who had navigated her own complicated path to acceptance within the royal family, offered Catherine the perspective of someone who had survived intense palace pressures through determination and resilience. She reminded Catherine that there was no script that had to be followed, no expectation that was worth sacrificing personal well-being to meet. The monarchy had survived and adapted for more than a millennium. It would continue to adapt, as it always had. The final decision crystallized during a private weekend at Anmer Hall, their country home in Norfolk, in late October. The children were playing in the garden, their laughter drifting through the open windows. William and Catherine watched them together, and in that moment of peace and normalcy, the answer became clear. Their family was complete, not because they could not physically have more children, but because they were choosing not to. It was an affirmative decision made from a place of gratitude for what they had rather than longing for what they did not have.